All right, it's been a while. Been quite busy, but as you can see, there's a lot has been done. Didn't really find the time to record it, but I still wanted to get my ideas out, so I did them sort of off camera. There's some stuff on my Instagram that I was able to quickly just capture. So if you're interested in seeing the process of it being built, you can check out my Instagram. Today, I will just walk through what we did. For starters, I built a sheep barn. Here houses my wool farm. I went for like an overgrown, kind of abandoned barn, but maybe not abandoned, but more like just not super taken care of. Did a nice gradient here with the spruce to mud to jungle, and from a distance, it kind of looks like an aged roof. Definitely needs a new one. And then I tried something new here with, instead of typically just going with like stairs hanging over a block, I just went with shelves as just a bit of a lip to the roof, which I kind of actually prefer than the typical stair. I think it looks pretty nice. Doesn't jut out too much, but you can still tell that there is some depth to it. I added like a bit of decoration here. Sometimes barns have like just, I think they're used for when like the wind's blowing and it points what direction the wind is blowing, but I'm not too sure. So I just tried to add something there just to kind of add some texture to it and something a bit different. Over here, I added a little like sheep pen type of thing, but I wanted it to be more natural. So I added like stone walls. So I'll have to get some sheep in here just to bring some animation to the builds here. But yeah, and then just a giant tree in the middle. It's a different type of tree than my normal like pine or spruce tree that I usually do. I kind of wanted to branch out and try something different. Trees that don't have like a general structure or a pattern, I typically struggle with because I don't, there's nothing really to follow. But I think that's, reflective of just real life and what happens in nature, where trees sometimes just appear to look all crazy and branches grow in different directions, and sometimes there's leaves, sometimes there aren't. So that's what I kind of tried to do here. And then adding, brighter leaves on the top to show like sunlight beaming through. And then moving over here, oh, I actually forgot to touch upon here. I had a gutter, which I think I forgot to add water into these stairs, but yeah, I wanted to add a gutter system, and just to also add some texture and depth to the outside of the bill so it wasn't super flat. And then over here, I added a silo. I recently took a trip to Canada, and while driving around, I saw lots of silos, and these were kind of the silos that were more modern, so they were like sheet metal, and that's what I kind of tried to go here, but at the same time I wanted to give some sort of age to it, maybe even like a slight rust. I could have done that with the roof, but I thought it might blend too much, so I just decided to keep the roof a bit more light and metal-like. So that's what that roof is representing, and then here you've got like the aged rust from the water and rain and weather and all that. Same thing with these iron bars and the copper bars, just kind of, sometimes they do have sort of like a frame or a support system. Here's the ladder where you can get to the top, and then there's usually like a metal cage around it. Yeah, and then I added some decorations out here. I'm not super experienced with the detailed decor, so I just went with something pretty basic, just some pots, hay bales, and then I'm using like the mini blocks to also add some variation in there. Pumpkins. Now I remember why I built this here. Sorry, it was a while ago. Underneath should be a pumpkin farm, which looks like it's full. But I was thinking of hooking up the output and then storing them in the silo. That's why I built it here. Okay, moving on. Built a little path down here. A bit of a stone wall that comes down to some wheat fields that will probably just kind of blotch around this area here. So maybe add some in this part here, and then maybe around here. Thinking about adding a second silo there. But I also want this to be more of a functional wheat farm, something that I actually can harvest and use. So that's why we have the little spots of water in there. Because over on this side, by the airstrip, I've been working on adding a sort of marshy coast. So I went with like a muddy mangrove roots into podzol, into coarse dirt, and then into just like a mix of grass and rooted dirt. And then just spreading out different bushes and then planting mature wheat seeds to give it the wheat field, but just overgrown and mix of just different vegetation. Outside here on the water, added just different bushes to kind of show algae, things that kind of got brushed up against the coast and have kind of accumulated there. A couple of reeds and drip leaves. And overall, I'm pretty happy with this. The inspiration for this mostly came from the area that I live, where some of the airports are like right on the water. You know, they really just kind of cleared out some of the marshy areas and built an airstrip. Even though in The Wind Rises, where most of this airstrip is inspired from, I did want to kind of add some different variation to it and implement something from where I live. So yeah, really happy with this, and we are going to extend that down all the way here and then probably to the end over here. That's going to require a lot of grass, a lot of this dry bushes. So in order to avoid burnout, I've just been doing little chunks. I also added a lighting system here, which I think is out of sync, probably because I've been going in and out of the chunk. Yeah, it's essentially just redstone under here. That's clock. And then this fires back and forth to send a double pulse, which turns on and off the copper bulbs. The idea was to show, you know, the lights that are on an airstrip indicating where you would land, and then these are the, you know, the tracks of previous planes repeatedly landing here. So in today's chapter, I want to cover up these two farms I have here. This one is a bonemeal farm, and this one over here is a moss farm. And I built these here specifically because I want to build towers for them, and I want them to be like abandoned towers. Some of it's broken, overgrown, just definitely not used. Most of the time I'll build it in creative just to kind of test out different palettes, texturing, blocks, and then once I'm happy with the result, I'll make it into a schematic using Lightmatica and then bring it into here. But sometimes I do want to show like the thought process of, you know, what I'm going through. And since this is a relatively simple build, it's just going to consist of really just the regular blocks and maybe some stairs and slabs. It's more of the palette that we're going to be sort of trying to figure out rather than like structure and design and everything. So this one I kind of want to try and freeball. I think we're going to do, for the lighter parts, a transition from lighter to a bit dark to darker, something like that, I think. And then maybe possibly some stone like that. So we'll do that for just the light parts of the build. And then for the darker spots, we'll do something like this. Got basalt. Yeah, we'll go with that. And then into tough, to pale moss. In some spots, I am going to want to add moss for that overgrown effect, where we'll use stone, the mossy stone and the mossy cobblestone. Maybe, you know, transition that into then the lighter palette, or possibly even the darker one. And then we can also add some azalea leaves where we can cover up the back with moss and have it give a different texture. So yeah, that's the palette we're gonna do. It's pretty basic, but I do like it. Let's get it into place. I wonder if I should use this side of the texture or this side. I mean, I think this side definitely matches this pattern a bit closer, but this one might be good for like the polished side. If I were to add it like that, it kind of helps that blend into that. So maybe we'll use both. I won't get too hung up on this transition. We'll just focus on extending it up, seeing what it'll look like with this kind of blocky spots of light and dark, and then yeah, then we'll take a step back and take a look at it. Alright, so this is what we got so far. I think I want to add less of this dark spots here on the bottom, because ultimately I think what I'm going to do is extend this. Instead of pushing this terrain out and having it sit on top, I think I'm going to almost have it like it's embedded within the earth here. So this will go all the way down, and so this dark spot actually should be moved down here, and then the gradient should move more green, much more green, and then sort of transition into that. I think we'll do that now just to see how that looks before we continue up. Okay, so I think maybe we'll go just a couple more blocks taller, and then what we'll do is start to add a bit of like a slope going down like this, and then maybe another one going up that way. So we'll go up, let's say 4 or 5 more. We'll keep it level on this side, and then once we get to the edge here, we'll slope it down and then slope it back up and there, and then maybe another little slope and connect up, and then we'll cover the top. And what I'm envisioning for that is it's basically just as if something just came out of the sky, you know, cannon was shot or something, and it just smashed part of the corner here. So we'll add slabs and walls and maybe some stairs to make it look jagged and broken. And that should be it. And then I think over here we'll add some sort of natural pathway or staircase up, and then we'll just stick a door in here or something so that we can get in and out of the farm. But yeah. Alright, so I think that's pretty good. I don't want to overdo it with like detailing, but I think this is enough to kind of show that it's been through some stuff, you know. I did add like slabs and stairs here with gaps and like hanging edges to just reinforce that image of it's been shattered here, it's been broken, crumbled. So all around we just added bits and pieces of walls and some stairs, slabs. Here we've got a nice green patch, dark areas, and I think it looks a lot better with less dark and it being used as just a sort of a contrast to what most of it would be green and gray. Yeah, I'm just gonna bring this part down a bit, and then I want to cover this up with like a wood flooring, maybe a mix of jungle, spruce, and maybe some packed mud. Again, just showing that, you know, aged flooring. It's been weathered because the top has been broken off, so I just got to make sure not to get too close to the lava here, because then it'll just burn. Alright, so here's the roof. Just added pieces of spruce to show the dark spots, the weathered spots, and then just a little bit of a gradient to kind of help blend it into the jungle, which represents what was the, you know, original wood here before it was blown to smithereens. So overall, this is the tower, and I really do like how it came out. First time I did something like that on the fly. Usually I plan these things out, and you know, it takes me a couple hours to figure out what I like, but just got to build a little scaffolding area here, pathway some sort to get inside, and then I want to cover up these holes here, do a bit of terraforming, and then yeah, that should be the build complete. Instead of just patching it up with moss, I think I'm gonna put like a boulder here, like an exposed boulder. Now we can add the moss on the outside here. Alright, nice. That looks a little better. Then for here, let's remove this. And I think I'll flatten this here. So I think I'm going to do like a scaffold staircase instead of like a more natural one. So I'm thinking like some sort of spruce, and it'll go up this way and then turn and then go up that way. And then have it be on like fence posts or something that kind of represent scaffolding. Just something that was quickly built in order to climb up. Alright, so this is it here. I was going to make it 3 wide, but I think it looks better and more narrow. And then I just went for, you know, some small scaffolding type thing here. And really like using the shelves as like a banister. And then for this, I think what I'm gonna do is just use moss as like an overhang, something like this, just to kind of show like overgrowth around the entrance. And then we can texture this up here and add some pale moss, pale hanging moss, and then some glowberries. And I think that'll be a pretty good entrance. All right, there we go. The vision for this mountain here is, slowly start terraforming it and making it into more of a proper mountain, adding more moss to it, and then even bits and pieces of exposed rocks and boulders and stuff that you would usually see on like mountainsides. We'll kind of do something similar here for this guy. I think it would be cool to add a bridge between the two. I was going to say a hanging bridge, but I think a stone bridge would be better. Almost like this used to be like a giant castle and it's been destroyed and the land has taken it back. So we'll have like a sort of like a big arch. Should be pretty cool. So that's all for this chapter. Till next time.